I'm sitting over here and I realized that, it's helpful if I actually have a microphone in front of me to talk.
Well, Alex, why are you laughing already?
Oh, what an idiot I am.
It is essential in podcasting to have the biggest microphone around.
Can we actually triple the size on these?
Yeah.
Do they have bigger foam pieces for
Yeah,
us?
yeah, we should. Yeah, go. And like a cool 70s color. Like, remember when they had they would shove a mic in your face, and then like prosecute attorney and
it was like some like burnt orange.
Yeah, burnt orange. Yeah, that would be perfect. That'd be an awesome,
what a wonderful snow cone we have here in front of us.
Well, let me ask you something, Alex.
Come on, don't be too personal.
No, I won't be too personal since we are live.
Yeah.
On most channels all over the world. The value of information.
There's no value to it.
No, but when we look at, I want us to look back, when we look at history and we see how information was processed and how it was communicated.
All right, let's think of a pertinent example. And they made a movie out of this. Let's talk about how obvious this one is. Remember that Enigma machine?
Yes.
Come on. That entire function of the war was strictly based there on information and how that information was protected. And that was the deciding factor for, whether or not you're going to find a German sub in the water or you're not.
Or a bomber. It was interesting. So they were using the Enigma machine. Mm-hmm. And Hitler was going to go into Britain. I think this was like September 39, around there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to go into, and he's like, well, we need to plan to make sure, because they just took over, France. And he goes, how are we going to go in here where we need to just absolutely devastate him with bombers? Because he knew they didn't have the United States was shipping tons of aircraft over there.
Yeah.
And he was like, we're going to do a surprise and just, nail London, just hammer them with bombs, which they eventually did that anyways. But these amazing guys knew that.
Or they were at Oxford.
They were listening to it. Yes.
Yeah,
they were listening to it with that machine. And
mathematicians looking at it, and they were trying to see, well, what is it that was repetitive in the process all the time of each encoded message, so they could use it and actually decrease the amount of time in deciphering what the key was. It was an encryption system.
So you kind of know the future when you have the information.
Yeah, when you have the information, you know the future. You know your future, and it tells you how to act, because now you're acting with knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Unless someone's encrypting and sending, junk messages that are trying to just skew you off. But it could do that. But the point is, when you talk about data and its importance in history, that saved a lot of lives.
Yes.
That's just one example of the infinite amount of examples where data takes the cake in foundationally leading us to a more stable, brighter future.
Yeah, and we have this article from Inside Big Data called "When Big Data Collides with Intellectual Property Law."
They're colliding.
Yeah, so it's not like the Hadron.
Yeah. Large Hadron Collider, whatever. I can never pronounce it.
Yeah.
Hadron?
Yeah.
Hadron? Hadrian.
Yeah, however it is, yeah.
Hades. Large Hades
Collider.
Collider.
Has something to do with that.
Yeah.
But the world of big data just keeps on turning, tossing up new opportunities, new approaches to business growth and development. And it hosts a new way of handling the population's vastly expanded data mass. And we talk about this.
Can you talk into the microphone? You're like whispering.
Am I whispering?
Yeah, when you read it, whispers.
Oh, that's probably because it's like I didn't have it that close.
Yeah.
Because I'm drinking coffee, so I don't want to be like...
Yeah. And then what are those ASMR things?
Oh, yeah, where it's like click, 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 and all that stuff. Yeah, they have...
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, there's some for everything. Have you seen the chiropractor? He has a microphone right next to people's back.
You listen to the back, like, so it's like crack a little bit. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's cool. He gets millions of views on it. So the realm of intellectual property, when we're looking at the idea of people owning their own data, and this is a proponent, and this is why you started TARTLE, Alex.
Yeah.
Can we kind of get into a little bit of an explanation of intellectual property, and then we'll get into the intellectual property law part of it?
Yeah, IP, right? It's kind of it's a function of time. So it's about time and labor, like most other things. So if I create a widget and I stamp on it, it was made at this Acme Co. That's essentially my property until I sell it, right? I put the work in,
right,
and it has some sort of store of value. Now, for other intellectual property in the digital domain, like maybe I have a thought and I created some sort of obscure digital thing. Now, I need to make sure that, well, first of all, did I do it before someone else? Maybe I submit a patent on it.
Yes.
Okay. And in doing so, is my name on the patent? Do I share it with multiple people? Does it collide with what maybe other systems kind of have in their system? So when you get into the digital atmosphere of intellectual property, there seems to be a little bit of a bleed. It's kind of like a gray area with a lot of things. Because like, how do you really define the time at when it was created, and how do you define really how it's being used? Which is important when you think about these,
and the creation of it, and where are the foundations coming from?
Right. So in that architecture and the thought of its creation and the time at which that happens defines the intellectual property belonging to one individual or not, right? Or a group of individuals. And so when we just for a stance here to think about it as an example, with TARTLE, you as an individual are creating that data at a specific time. You're putting in the labor. You have the thoughts that lead to the generation of that thing, that digital thing. And we want to be very clear that there's no bleed between one or the other. It is in fact yours. Even though that data might have sat on someone else's server, think of it as a widget. It's like you went and you stored it in their server for a bit, but it's still yours. If I go to deposit something at a bank, it's mine. The bank is just safely holding it for me.
Yes.
We're in a safety deposit box. That doesn't mean they own it, okay, unless I relinquish claim to it or consentfully give it to them. But that intellectual property belongs to me, that person who's generating that data. And when you talk about big data, it's like they're mixing all of these different pieces of data together coming from these different servers. And the question is, the way it's being analyzed and what is being analyzed, who actually has the ownership of that?
Yeah, because, with privacy agreements and everything that we sign, and then from there, they're taking, there's 4 billion people on the internet. So whenever you're taking this mass amounts of data from these people, and then from there, you want to turn around and create a subset, or we always talk about buckets or whatever.
Yep.
And then now we got to say, who does this bucket belong to?
Right.
I curated it. These people created it, but I curated it. So do I own it, or do they own it?
And because I put them in that bucket, does that mean now the design of that bucket or the choice to put it in there, was that my process?
Right.
And so now you start to define the intellectual property of somebody else.
Yes.
What are you talking about? I'm the one. It's mine. What is it for you to decide?
See, I would want to make sure, if I was a company, I wouldn't care who the people are and the data that's being created in the people. The process and the algorithm is what I would want to say is mine.
Yeah. I was watching Star Wars Mandalorian.
I haven't seen that yet. Is it good?
It's all right. There was a lot of hype about it. People just like Baby Yoda. There's this one scene where this robot, this droid, shows up in the earlier episodes and then in one of the later episodes. So this head honcho, the head guy, the Mandalorian guy, the protagonist, shoots this droid in the head, like kills this droid. Then this dude, this kind of rural dude, rebuilds the droid and reprograms him. And so when the Mandalorian comes face to face with the droid again, he's like, I don't like this droid. I don't trust him. And the dude who rebuilt him said, well, why don't you trust him? Well, he's like, well, he's a bounty hunting droid. He only knows how to kill. He said, that's not true. He said, the droids have no feelings or emotions. The droids are only imprinted with the algorithm that we decide as the person on the outside. There's no emotion in what it does or any choice or like has any perspective. It's what we are defining as the outside person imprinting on this machine.
So it'd be the same with consciousness in our simulation that we live in.
Yeah, there we go.
You opened this up, bro. You're the one that did this.
So when we look at that, with big data, there's subtle nuances with who's imprinting that algorithm, right? If you are that company, and who's the person that is actually feeding the data into for that algorithm to actually process. You can have an algorithm, great, but somebody has to give that to you. So those become separate things. It's not the fact that the data and the algorithm become one; they're separate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one person owns intellectual property, and the person with the servers and the algorithm owns that.
Yeah, and the confusion I think lies in the issue of the complication of specific data sets. And I'm reading from the article here. They said, indeed, while information can still be collated directly, it's more usual for databases to be compiled from automatically harvested information, gleaned from a wide array of disparate sources. This is, after all, part and parcel of the internet as we know it. So when you have, and he goes into talking about IoT devices, and they're taking all this, data that's generated by a multitude of devices in real time. Is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
And used by consumers.
Hold the damn paper up in front of your face.
I know, I'm reading it like this, this. It's when you get old, bro, it's one of those things. Yeah, I can pull it towards. I moved the mic.
That better?
Yesterday. Is this better?
Yeah.
We can knock up my mic too. But whether or not it's the IoT device, or if it's, when you look at, so I want us to look at this. So you have a Whoop on right now.
Yeah, I do.
Let's get really practical. You have the Timex watch isn't an IoT device. So
that's
the cheapest.
This is grandpa.
Yeah, but those things last forever. And then you have a Dell computer.
Battery lasts longer than a Tesla.
So that's you're producing data right now. If you're on Google, you're producing data, Chrome or whatever. The Rode's hooked up to our board is hooked up to the internet. Yep. So I have a Whoop. I have a cell phone. You have an Android phone. I have an Apple phone.
Yep.
I mean, and you have a GoPro that's filming this. And we could kind of just go through my whole house and we'd probably find at least 10 or 15 things.
Yeah, data collecting
that's
devices.
happening right now.
Yeah.
In this time.
This TV's hooked up to the internet.
Yes.
That other TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's 3 TVs in here in this place.
Yeah.
So all 3 of those are, think about it. So that amount of data that I'm creating, who owns it? TARTLE would say, we own it.
Yeah, TARTLE would, because listen.
But is Whoop saying I own the data because he bought the device from me and signed the privacy agreement?
No, actually, I talked to them. They think you own your data. I'm just saying, cool. as an example.
Yeah.
But for the TV, I don't know what's going on with a Roku.
Yeah. Roku's collecting.
I don't, for our podcast publishing services. It's on their servers, but we recorded it.
Yeah, Libsyn.
What if we have copyright on it, but who owns the intellectual property of that data sitting on the server? Not the copyright of it, but just data in general. It's like
that's interesting. Yeah,
it's an interesting fact. And so when we look at it, in this philosophical,
this would be really tough in the music industry. Like if you released like on SoundCloud or something.
Correct. We are on SoundCloud.
Yeah, but if you released a song, now that song went super viral. Now attorneys are going to get involved.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure this has happened.
Only when it's viral. Oh, it seems like you used 3 of these notes, which were also used in a Queen song back in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whatever. It's a chord progression. Get off my back.
So, once again, what we're seeing with this, and I want you to clarify this. Once again, what we're seeing with this is in this new world that we're entering in, this new VR set that we're putting on, we're having these questions come up that we have to answer.
Yeah, because there's like cross-pollination. No.
And decentralization. So here's my question that I want to propose to you, and we'll close in this one. The way that we answer the question is going to be the way that our future is shaped for the most important time in history for amplification of technology.
Yeah.
And if these attorneys and these big data companies take it and say, and they're only thinking about monetization, what does that do for humanity?
So I'll talk about that as an example. So I was speaking with my attorneys yesterday. Not any bad format. I had a question around intellectual property. And the mindset with them is money. How do we prosecute, for, an issue of like economic gain or loss? And the question was, he's like, well, where do the servers sit? And I said, well, they sit all over the world. Like, what are you supposed to do? It's decentralized. And then they were all like, wait a minute. And they're trying to figure it out because there's a difference in the change of the mindset. Because if the system is supported by the public, but the server's sitting in one specific area, where does the jurisdiction actually lie? And so if you have split jurisdictions across 200 plus countries, how do you prosecute on intellectual property then? If it's being stored in servers all over the place. So the initial thought was that you own it if it sits in your server here in a domestic area. That's where you would prosecute on it. But now things are becoming inherently decentralized.
Right.
So from an economic standpoint, it's like, well, it's not so black and white anymore.
No.
There's so much bleed. There's some, like I said, cross-pollination. It becomes a huge gray area. So I thought that was frankly interesting. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but just considering that. And so when you think about it, if that's the issue, if they're thought as servers, then we have to go even deeper. You have to then go to the individual person or company that is actually generating that data. Because if the server has been the defining factor, but servers have now become decentralized, you can't rely on that anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's no longer black and white. So you're going to have to take a whole new step down to that primary foundational level and figure out who is the actual progenitor of that data. What is the provenance from server to cell phone to actually thought from the human being? That's where it sits. And so when we designed TARTLE, we thought about it. It's like that intellectual property belongs to that person.
Mm-hmm.
It has to, especially when we view the world and it's inherently becoming more decentralized. That means you have to have your own empowerment, your own self-responsibility over this thing, because if you want the value from it, if you want the intellectual property over that data, you have to be responsible for its management, not pass off that responsibility to someone else's management on some server somewhere so that they can say, well, maybe we own it.
No, I think that's beautiful. And I think it's just a reaction
Mm-hmm.
to change. And so whenever you're reacting, you go into this protective bubble.
SEC and Gensler.
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
Oh, what do we do with blockchain? I have no idea.
Oh,
what do we do
we're losing power.
What do we do with Reddit?
Politics
when they're making our shorts go?
Politics are falling apart. The financial scams are crippling people that have been running the business for too long.
Oh, this is funny. Okay, well, we better be done.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go into that anymore.